Well, the United Kingdom is all set for the coronation of King Charles III today. He'll be crowned alongside Camilla, the Queen Consort, at Westminster Abbey. Huge crowds are already starting to gather along the London procession route ahead of the coronation. Let's take you live to London this morning. Joining us is Henry Ridgwell, VOA's London and Europe correspondent. Henry, it's great to see you, and I can just imagine the vibe, the mood behind you there.
Yeah, it's a real mood of celebration. It's been a difficult few months for the country since the death, of course, of Queen Elizabeth II in September. And now the country is getting ready to greet its new king, an historic ceremony that stretches back over 1,000 years. The first king to be crowned in Westminster Abbey was William the Conqueror in 1066. And here we are in 2023, King Charles III and Queen Consort Camilla will take up the steps of Westminster Abbey at around 11 o'clock this morning, and then the Prince Edward crown will be placed upon the head of King Charles at around midday. They will move by procession along the Mall in the Gold State carriage, cheered on by tens of thousands of people, some of whom have been camping out here in central London for more than a week to get their place for a quick glimpse of the new king and queen. They will then go back to Buckingham Palace this afternoon, and there is scheduled to be a flyby of several aircraft to greet the royal couple when they appear on the balcony of Buckingham Palace this afternoon. Although you might be able to see behind me, there's some light rain, another British tradition just about to be falling. So that might dampen the spirits a little. It might also force the cancellation of the flyby, but fingers crossed it doesn't get too heavy rain here, and everybody anyway is in a real celebratory mood.
Yeah, showers of blessings, shall we say, Henry. I mean, there's been a lot of discussion around buy-in from the British public insofar as King Charles himself is concerned. And I sort of thought that there'd be a bigger crowd behind you there. Is that a sign of the weather, or is it a sign of that buy-in?
Well, I think, well, to be clear, where I am now, I'm in Hyde Park in central London. This is some way from the Mall. It's about half a mile behind me, where more of the crowds are gathering, but members of the media aren't allowed that close. It's reserved for members of the public. So I think there will be tens of thousands gathering there in the next few hours, and we are expecting thousands more here in Hyde Park. Bear in mind, it's still 2.5 or so hours until the initial procession from Buckingham Palace to Westminster Abbey takes place. But you're absolutely right. There is a difficulty, I think, for King Charles III now to establish his own reign as king. Of course, he's been waiting to become the monarch for 7 decades. And he's always, of course, been in the shadow of his hugely popular mother, Queen Elizabeth II, who was admired, adored, not only in this country, but around the world. And it's been a long wait for him to become king, and he has been an outspoken Prince of Wales during that time. We know that he's passionate about issues like climate change, the environment, about helping poorer young people around the world with their futures. And now that he's king, he's going to have to be less outspoken and become more of a regal figure, the kind of figure that Queen Elizabeth II presented as the ceremonial head of state for Britain. So it's going to be a bit difficult for him, I think, to stay quiet on those issues he's passionate about. But having said that, I think there is a growing admiration, respect and enthusiasm for the new king, and indeed for Queen Consort Camilla as well. Everybody understands it's been difficult for him. The royal family have had a difficult few decades, of course, for Charles himself. His son Harry and Meghan split from the royal family and now live in the United States. His brother, Prince Andrew, has been embroiled in a sex assault case that he settled out of court. And all that has been going on in the background of allegations of racism made by Meghan Markle that were denied by the palace. Those continue to overshadow the monarchy and the royal family in this country, and that has created something of a generational divide as well. So a recent poll suggested that over 65s, overwhelmingly by 78%, support the monarchy. But if you look at the 18 to 25-year-old bracket, it's just 32%. So a real stark difference. And so King Charles and Queen Camilla are going to have to start building some relationship with those younger generations I think, if the future of the monarchy is to be secured, because at a time when there is a cost of living crisis, when the kind of extreme wealth that the monarchy and the royal family represents is inevitably creating strains within society. An event like today, which of course millions in this country and around the world are celebrating, but then there are others here who are questioning whether the estimated cost of, well, we don't know because it's not been published, £100 million, perhaps more, of this event is really appropriate at a time of extreme cost of living crisis. So I think there are questions hanging over the reign of King Charles III, but this is very much a day of celebration, a day of history, a day of pomp and pageantry that, you know, tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions around the world will tune in and enjoy, and something which few other countries do quite the way that Britain does.
Yeah, you mentioned Harry, Prince Harry, his wife Meghan Markle. Harry, we understand, will have no official role in the coronation today. In fact, his wife's not even in the country for the coronation of her father-in-law. You know, how much of that is playing into sort of the drama around what's taking place today?
Well, it's inevitably a background issue here that people will talk about and continue to talk about. We had the publication of Prince Harry's book there earlier this year, and that, of course, created a media storm, huge interest from around the world, and embarrassment for King Charles and Buckingham Palace. And the fact that Meghan Markle is not here, that Harry will not play any formal role in the ceremony. We understand it will be a fleeting visit by him. Contrast that with his older brother, Prince William and Catherine, and the central role that they will play in the ceremony, the central role that they've played in the build-up today. And inevitably, it will be, you know, always there in the background, the elephant in the room, if you like, that Harry is not playing a role in this. And you look back at the history, of course, who can forget those tragic pictures of Prince Charles and Harry and William following the coffin of Princess Diana in 1997 after her death in Paris. And South Africa was was the first overseas country that Prince Charles took Harry to after the death of his mother. We know the two countries have a close relationship, and King Charles has always referred to Harry as his darling boy. We know that he is heartbroken by what has happened. But if you like, palace protocol and the constitutional role of the monarchy has taken over. And so we have this difficult sort of family relationship playing out, this tragedy that has played out over recent years and decades as the background to this sort of glorious constitutional event that we will see today. I mean, there's no television soap opera quite like it, and I guess that's why so many people are so interested in it and are coming here today and are tuning in around the world to watch.
Yeah, it's historic no matter which way you look at it, right, Henry? It's the first coronation in 70 years, as you say. King Charles waiting all his life to do exactly what's taking place there today. I want to talk a bit more about the actual sort of ceremonial parts of the coronation today. You know, and it goes back to the discussion around, you know, how inclusive, how progressive the monarchy is. It's a largely Christian ceremony in a country that's no longer largely Christian, but there are sort of attempts to try and bring some other cultural aspects into the ceremonial parts of what will happen today. Can you outline some of those for us, Henry?
Yeah, so it is a very religious ceremony, and we know that King Charles is a very religious man. Just to give you an idea of some of the extraordinary Christian sort of aspects that will be part of the ceremony, the ceremonial cross that has been constructed for the coronation includes shards from what's said to be the true cross upon which Jesus was crucified that have been gifted to the Church of England by Pope Francis. The holy oil that will be used to anoint King Charles was brought here from Jerusalem. That ceremony will be conducted by the Archbishop of Canterbury and will take place behind a screen within the Abbey, so we won't be able to see that as members of the public. There is the Stone of Destiny beneath the throne upon which Charles will be crowned, which dates back to a battle in Scotland 800 years ago, won by King Edward. So the historical religious connotations here and the Christian aspects will be very much front and centre. But for the first time, King Charles has invited faith leaders from all faiths here in England. And we understand there was some discussion with the Archbishop of Canterbury over that, but that has been the personal choice of King Charles, and those faith leaders have very much welcomed that. And it won't just be world leaders, kings and queens and dignitaries and members of the royal family in the Abbey either. There are 2,000 members of the congregation, and among those will be people invited from all over the world, all walks of life, particularly those who have benefited from the Prince's Trust, which is a charity set up by King Charles, or Prince Charles as he was then, to help young people. For example, there is an Afro hairstylist here who has set up 2 charities here in the UK and 1 in Africa. She is quite famous now and is going to be sitting near the front of the Abbey here. There are many other charity workers invited here. So I think what they've tried to do is, of course, they've got to stick to the ceremony and the protocol, but they've also tried to involve members of the public within the ceremony today and in the lead up to today, importantly as well. So King Charles and Camilla were in Liverpool in recent days, where the Eurovision Song Contest, I don't know if you watched that in South Africa, but that will be held in the coming days. He met some of the contestants and some of the crowd there. Prince William and Catherine yesterday took the Elizabeth line, the relatively new rail line here in London, across town, chatting to members of the public on the metro, on the tube, and went into a pub in Soho in central London to fill a couple of pints and to discuss how preparations there are going for the coronation ceremony today. So they are trying to get over that barrier with the public, if you like, very much be involved. And that speaks to the consciousness within the royal family that they have to connect to the public. Now that the reign of Queen Elizabeth II is over, you know, as we've been discussing, she was played such a key role within society, not just within sort of the constitution here, but within people's lives and society. And the royal family has got to try to now fill that vacuum and create a new role for Prince Charles. So reaching out, you know, across faith, across cultures, across races, here in Britain and around the world will be a key part of that.
Yeah, certainly members of the royal family, Henry, going on a charm offensive in the days leading up to the coronation today. We've been talking about how much of a historic event this is, and we've been showing our viewers some live visuals there coming to us from various parts of the coronation. I believe that's the entrance to Westminster Abbey, where guests are already starting to make their way in. I understand the ceremony sort of gets underway at 11, Henry, starts officially at 12 o'clock. But let's talk a bit more about the big shoes that the king certainly has to fill. And of course, we're talking about Queen Elizabeth II. He's 74 years old. There are a lot of questions, as we've been discussing this morning, about how progressive, how perhaps out of place the monarchy is at the age of 74. You know, is the king up for the job, Henry?
Well, he very much thinks so, and the palace very much believes he is. And I think we will see him trying to fill that role that Queen Elizabeth II had, both here in the UK and overseas. The king and queen conducted their first overseas visit to Germany in recent months, and that was seen as very much a success, building bridges with European allies, with a key European ally, with, of course, a country with which Britain was only recently at war with when Elizabeth II was crowned in 1953, and here we are 70 years on after Brexit in 2016, of course, and a difficult relationship in recent years with European allies. So we don't know the King's opinion on that particular political issue. The royal family does every effort to stay out of those debates, but it was clear that he wanted to build bridges with European allies then. And of course, King Charles hasn't stayed silent on other issues, including climate change, among others. And those issues are seen as key in building those bridges with the younger generations, as we've been discussing, who are far less enthusiastic about the monarchy, it seems, than older generations, and who are more sceptical about the cost of the monarchy and of the coronation ceremony itself. But those same surveys show that as people get older, they tend to respect the monarchy more, they tend to become more admirable of it. So is King Charles III, keep on calling him Prince Charles, it shows how much of a adaptation we all have to make after the passing of his mother. Is he up to the job of representing the monarchy, of keeping it relevant worldwide? I think some of the key questions are the debate that he chooses to have and to engage with. Already he has opened up a conversation about the monarchy's past link with the slave trade, for example, something that has overshadowed the monarchy, of course, for decades, something that many overseas countries, particularly in Africa and the Caribbean, have spoken about and long demanded recognition of and possibly compensation or reparations for. And King Charles has said that words to the effect of, our relationship with the countries in Africa, with not only the Commonwealth countries, but also the whole continent, cannot reach their full potential until those past atrocities, and those were his words, are confronted and discussed. So that is going to be very much at the forefront of his future relations, with the African continent, certainly with countries in the Caribbean too, which are considering becoming republics following the lead of Barbados in 2021 and removing the British monarch as their head of state. So that's going to be a process that we can expect to see in the following years as well. How can King Charles sort of avoid that movement of republicanism among many of those Commonwealth countries from sort of overshadowing and withdrawing from the relevance of the monarchy here in Britain and around the world? I think that's going to be extremely difficult. Some of the countries where Queen Elizabeth II was most respected, Canada, Australia, still have the monarch as their head of state, but we have a prime minister in Australia now, for example, who is very much committed to his country becoming a republic. There's a strong Republican movement as well in Canada, of course. Both of those have constitutional difficulties in removing the monarch anytime soon. So can he stay relevant? He's got to engage in those debates, and he's got to, I think, pay more than lip service to those debates. One interesting aspect is the repression of the Mau Mau uprising in Kenya. We can look at the history of that in the 1950s when Kenya was trying to achieve its independence. Queen Elizabeth II was crowned in 1953, and the years that followed that Mau Mau uprising in Kenya occurred, it was brutally put down by the British colonial forces. People were tortured, people were killed, and it was only in recent years that the British monarchy agreed to pay a group of survivors who took them to court £5 million of compensation. Will we see more cases like that? Will we see a willingness among King Charles III to open up that debate around reparations for slavery? Will he look at the treasures and all those royal collections here in London and in other museums across the country and around the world that include precious items that were plundered under colonial rule? There's the Cullinan diamonds, very relevant to you in South Africa. Debate there. They were taken by the royal family, and they were part of the Queen Elizabeth II's Auburn scepter. Will they still be returned? Will they remain in Britain? Will that debate be entered by the royal family? I think he's going to have to confront those. It's going to be very difficult for him to walk that line between trying to maintain some kind of authority of the royal family, of the monarchy, if you like, while also accepting that its role has to change, accepting that there are critics of it around the world.
Yeah, and if you're going to be progressive, just how progressive are you willing to be? Henry Ridgwell, it's been a great pleasure talking to you this morning. VOA's London and Europe correspondent, as we talk all things Coronation on this May the 6th. In fact, just a moment ago, I saw Dame Judi Dench and her husband also making their way into Westminster Abbey. Just a sense of the kinds of people who'll be attending